You're watching Let the Quran Speak. Being a Muslim is about more than praying or being devoted to God. It's also about one's involvement in the community. Today we speak with Besma Sultan, the co-founder of Speakout Poetry. She organizes spoken word competitions in order to build bridges and combat racism. Have a look. So Besma, why did you start writing poetry? What was it doing for you?
Poetry has been a hobby since I was 12 or 13, and it was just my own personal way of expressing myself and communicating.
Mm-hmm. You're one of the co-founders of Speakout. What motivated you to start that organization?
Speakout was initiated by a group of youth that met late in 2008. We wanted to do something that's creative, using an art medium to communicate ourselves, focus on the points of overlap between us as Muslims and also being Canadian and living in Canada, and realizing that a lot of people, a lot of Muslims kind of only work with Muslim organizations or volunteer in those kind of venues, which doesn't create a lot of space to building bridges and you know, kind of stepping over the barriers that exist between us and the rest of Canada. And that was how it was initiated.
Mm-hmm. Now, Speakout uses the art form of spoken word. What's unique about that art form?
Spoken word is performance poetry. So it's you know, coming out of the written poetry or the Shakespearean poetry. It's kind of building a bridge between the world of theater and performing on a stage and written poetry. So you're utilizing not just the words themselves, but also the power of the body language and the eye communication and all of that in it.
Mm-hmm. One of the goals of spoken word seems to be social commentary on, let's say, racism, oppression. Was that something that interested you or motivated you?
The team behind Speakout, we're trying to find ways of kind of leaving our own marks in what we do, in Speakout and through spoken word and elsewhere. So. And that's kind of presented through the topics that are performed in Speakout. A lot of them are, yes, regarding social justice, social change, and educating. So you're not just being entertained and enjoying a show, but you're also being inspired, you're also being educated.
Now, do you think that spoken word can bridge boundaries? For example, cultural, religious, social boundaries between individuals or between communities, perhaps?
It definitely can bridge boundaries. It goes back to the messages that are being presented. So we've had artists that spoke about you know, the Aboriginals and the issues they go through. We've had artists that spoke about issues of self-esteem and how they present themselves and how people view them. We've had very diverse topics. One of the topics, for example, that comes to mind is about immigrants and what they go through first, and how, you know, all their credentials kind of are worthless in certain situations. So you're communicating all these thoughts to the people that you're presenting to, and informing them and educating them of those topics, and therefore you're in the process, you're building a bridge, starting conversation between yourself and those listening to you.
Do you think this could be a particular benefit to, let's say, a minority group or a marginalized community? For example, Muslims, but many other communities as well.
It definitely can be used that way because, again, it's the power of how you use those tools. I mean, someone can walk down the street and hold up a sign and say, you know, I'm this and I'm that, and this is what I present. But then you're only limiting yourself and the scope of the people that you reach out to the, you know, maybe the 100 that pass you by. But with art and spoken word in particular, you're able to communicate it to a lot more people, especially with the technologies that we have today. And I mean, you can put easily a video on YouTube, and before you know it, in a span of a few days, it can go viral, and people on the other side of the world know about what you're talking about.
Besma, is there a relationship between spoken word and the Islamic tradition?
Back in the day, there was the mu'allaqat, or the hanging posters that existed in the Kaaba, and it was poetry in general was the form of communication and the medium that was used to spread a message. but we also have the Quran and the power of words that exist in that resonate up to the day and age that we're living in. So for us as Muslims working in Speakout and knowing all of this history, it gives us a different taste and a different way of thinking because we know the power of words.
Does Islam motivate your work? Is there any aspect of Islam that bleeds into the sort of work that you're doing?
The message of Islam itself is for everyone, and it says lil alameen, which is to everyone around us and not just lil muslimin, just for the Muslims. So knowing that and using the universal messages and focusing on the points of overlap, as I said, between us as Muslims and Canadians.
There's a bit of a religious ethos imbued in the work that you're doing in terms of the boundaries that you have in terms of your performances. So can you speak about that?
Speakout and the events that we hold, there are 3 very simple rules for anyone that performs in Speakout, which is no profanity, no explicit sexual content, and just use your common sense, keeping in mind that our audience is very diverse in terms of age, in terms of background, in terms of religion. So we always aim to create a space that's respectful to everyone. You know, if let's say if we're speaking in English and we're in France where everyone speaks French, just out of courtesy and respect to the people around us, that we communicate in a language that they understand. The same applies here. You're communicating in a space, in an art form that's respectful to everyone. We're not trying to put anyone aside.
Mm-hmm. What challenges have you faced in the work that you're doing from Muslims and members of the wider community or from other religious communities?
Well, for any organization starting off, there is the struggles that everyone goes through, just establishing your brand and having your name be recognized. There's also the financial issues of applying for grants and putting sponsorship packages together, especially given that everyone that works in Speakout up to this day, we're all volunteers, none of us get paid. So there's those struggles, but there's also the communication struggles. I know for me personally, maybe till a couple of years before Speakout, my involvement in the community was mainly in the Muslim community. And it was interesting to start being involved in other events and other communities and realizing that really a lot of the barriers that are between us go back to us and not because of what's on TV and whatnot, because we're not creating those venues of communication with other people, and therefore they don't see us. They don't know who we are. All they see and know is what's in the papers and what's on TV. But it doesn't tie into the purpose and the goal of Speakout, which is focusing again on the points of overlap that bring us all together.
That was Besma Sultan, one of the co-founders of Speakout Poetry. For more information on events, visit speakoutpoetry.com. Coming up next, our question and answer period.